right, then. You're probably learning all about computers in your GCSE Computer Science, and one of the really key bits to get your head around is the CPU, the Central Processing Unit.
Hmm.
It's basically the brain of your computer, isn't it? The thing that makes everything happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in this deep dive, which is part of our ongoing series, we're going to have a proper look inside, its metaphorical skull and see what's actually in there, specifically focusing on the components and what they do.
That's right. Think of this as episode 5 in our GCSE series where we're really uh, dissecting the CPU.
Right.
We're going to explore the essential building blocks that make it up and how they all work together to run the programs you use every day. Imagine it as like understanding the key players in a really intricate machine.
Okay. And just to set the scene a bit, pretty much all the computers you use, like the ones at school or at home, they're based on something called the von Neumann architecture.
That sounds a bit posh, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But the main idea, going all the way back to the 1940s, is, well, how the computer's memory, where it stores information,
Hmm.
its input and output, like your keyboard and screen and the processor itself, all work together and communicate.
Yeah, and this unified approach, where data and instructions actually share the same memory space, that was revolutionary for its time. It made computers much more flexible, able to do a much wider range of tasks than the older designs.
Exactly. It's the fundamental design, really, that dictates how these core parts interact.
So our mission today is to really zoom in on that processor, the CPU, and understand the key components inside it and exactly what each one is responsible for.
Okay.
We want to make sense of what might seem like really complicated inner workings, especially for your GCSE.
Okay, so when we peek inside this brain of the computer, what are the main bits we should know about?
Well, at its heart, the CPU has 5 key components that are crucial for your GCSE understanding. First up is the arithmetic logic unit, or ALU.
The ALU, right. Sounds like it does sums and stuff.
That's a good way to think of it, yeah. The ALU is responsible for performing all the arithmetic operations, like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division.
Okay.
But it also handles logical decisions. Think of it making comparisons, like deciding if one number is greater than another.
Ah, right.
For example, a program you might write in Python could have an instruction like, if x is greater than 5, then do this other thing. The ALU is what actually figures out if x is indeed greater than 5.
So it's doing the calculation or the comparison bit?
Exactly. The beauty of the ALU is that it can handle both calculations and decisions using the same basic building blocks, these things called logic gates, which makes it incredibly versatile.
So it's not just crunching numbers for your programs, it's also making those little yes or no decisions that control what the program does next.
Precisely. The second key component is the control unit, or CU.
Right.
If the ALU is like the muscle doing the work, the CU is the coordinator, the one in charge.
The boss, yeah. Telling all the other parts what they need to do.
You've got it. The control unit's job is to manage the flow of data within the CPU. It sends out control signals to tell the other components what to do and when to do it.
Okay.
And crucially, for understanding how your programs run, it's also responsible for decoding the instructions that have been fetched from the computer's memory. It figures out what those instructions actually mean.
All right, so the CU gets an instruction from memory and says, okay, ALU, you need to add these 2 numbers, or maybe memory, you need to send this data back to the CPU.
That's the essence of it, yeah.
Yeah.
The third component is the clock. Now, this isn't like the clock on your wall or phone that tells you the time.
No, I thought as much. So what job does the CPU's clock do?
Well, the clock generates regular electrical pulses at a
Yeah.
really constant rate. Think of it like a drummer in a band, setting the tempo that all the other musicians follow.
Ah, okay.
In the CPU, this kind of metronome keeps all the different components working together in sync. Everything happens on the beat of this clock, making sure instructions are processed in the correct order.
So it's all about timing, making sure all the different parts of the CPU do their bit at precisely the right moment.
Exactly. Next up, we have registers.
Registers.
These are a special type of very small memory located right inside the CPU itself.
Memory inside the processor.
Right.
Not like the main RAM.
No, exactly. The key thing for your GCSE is to understand that registers are extremely small but incredibly fast. Much, much faster than RAM.
Okay.
They're used to hold tiny bits of data that the CPU needs right now for the immediate steps of processing. Because they're right there inside the CPU and super speedy, it's much quicker for the CPU to grab data from a register than from the main computer memory, the RAM.
So like little super fast scratch pads right next to the main workers inside the CPU. Almost like a chef having their chopped onions right beside them.
That's a great analogy, yeah,
Yeah.
like prep bowls. And there are a few key types of registers that have specific jobs you should know for your exams.
Okay, what are they?
First, there's the accumulator, or ACC. This register stores the results of calculations that the ALU has just carried out.
Right.
So the answer to the sum the ALU just did, or the result of a comparison, often goes straight into the accumulator.
So after the ALU does its maths or its logical comparison, the result is temporarily held right there in the accumulator.
Just spot on. Then we have the memory address register, or MER.
There.
Okay,
Right.
this one holds the specific location, the address in the main memory, RAM, where the next instruction or piece of data that the CPU needs is stored.
Ah, so it's like holding the postcode for where to find the next thing in RAM.
Exactly like that. It tells the CPU where to look in the main memory.
Right, so the CPU uses the MER to know exactly where in the RAM to go to get the next instruction or data it needs to work on.
Precisely. And then there's the memory data register, or MDR.
Got it.
This register acts as a temporary holding place for the actual data or instruction that has just been fetched from that location in RAM. The location specified by the NOR.
Okay.
So if the MER is the address, the MDR is like the actual package, the data that gets delivered from that address. It holds the stuff fetched from RAM before the CPU uses it.
So the MAR says, go to this place, and the MDR holds what was actually found at that place temporarily.
You've got it.
Yeah.
And finally, for registers, we have the program counter, or PC. This is a really important one for understanding how programs run step by step.
The PC.
The program counter stores the memory address of the next instruction that needs to be fetched and executed.
The next one.
Yeah, and what's really clever is that after an instruction is processed, the program counter automatically increases, usually by 1, or sometimes by the size of the instruction just completed, so it points to the very next instruction in the sequence of your program.
Ah, so it's like the page number in a recipe book, always telling the CPU what step to do next in the program.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
It keeps track of where we are in the program sequence. And the fifth key component connecting things up is the bus.
The bus, like the big red things on the road.
Laugh slightly.
Yeah.
Well, similar concept in a way.
Huh.
A bus, in computer terms, is a set of wires, physical pathways, that allow data and control signals to travel between all the different components, both within the CPU connecting the ALU, CU, and registers, and also between the CPU and other parts of the computer, like the main memory, RAM, or input-output devices.
So it's the road network that all the information travels on within your computer system. All these different parts we've talked about need these buses to communicate and send information to each other.
Exactly. They're the communication highways. Now that you have a good grasp of the key components inside the CPU for your GCSE, it's also really important to understand what affects how well a CPU actually performs.
Good point. Because you always hear about different computers being faster than others. What are the main things that make a difference in how quickly a CPU can do its job?
Well, there are 3 main characteristics that significantly impact a CPU's performance. The first one is clock speed.
We mentioned the clock earlier.
Yeah. As we said, the clock generates pulses, right? The clock speed measures how many of those cycles, or more accurately, how many fetch-decode-execute cycles, which we'll cover properly in a sec, can happen in 1 second. It's measured in hertz. But modern CPUs, well, they operate in gigahertz or gigahertz, billions of cycles per second.
Wow.
So if a CPU has a faster clock speed, it's literally doing more of those fetch-decode-execute cycles every single second, which means it can process more instructions in the same amount of time.
So faster clock means faster processing.
Generally, yes. A CPU with a clock speed of, say, 3.5 gigahertz can potentially perform up to 3.5 billion of these cycles, and therefore potentially process up to 3.5 billion instructions every single second. So yeah, higher clock speed usually means a faster CPU.
Right, that makes sense. It's like a faster worker being able to get more done in the same hour. What's the next thing that affects performance?
The second characteristic is cache size, cache memory.
Ah, yeah, you mentioned that briefly with registers. It's fast memory, too.
Very fast, yes. Not quite as fast as registers, but significantly quicker to access than the main RAM. Cache is that small amount of very fast memory that's either located directly on the CPU chip itself or very, very close to it. And it acts as a temporary storage area, a buffer, for instructions and data that the CPU is using really frequently or thinks it might need again very soon.
Right.
So if the computer needs something and it's already in the cache, it can grab it much, much faster than having to go all the way out to the slower main memory, the RAM.
So it's like keeping your most used textbooks right there on your desk instead of having to walk to the library every single time you need to look something up.
That's a brilliant way to put it, exactly. And CPUs often have multiple levels of cache, L1, L2, sometimes L3, each a bit bigger, but slightly slower than the last, creating a sort of hierarchy to optimize getting that data quickly.
So a bigger cache means the CPU can keep more of its frequently used instructions and data really close by and access them super quickly, speeding things up overall.
Precisely. The larger the cache, the higher the chance that the data the CPU needs next is already there. This reduces the number of times the CPU has to wait for data to arrive from the much slower main memory, which is a major performance booster.
Okay, so faster access to more of the stuff it uses all the time makes perfect sense why that would improve performance. And the third thing,
The third key characteristic is the number of processor cores.
cores. Right, you hear about dual core, quad core.
Exactly. Think of a core as being like a separate, complete processing unit, almost like a whole CPU, but all built onto a single chip.
Okay.
So a single processor chip you buy for your computer can actually contain multiple of these cores. Each core typically has its own ALU, its own control unit, and its own set of registers.
Like having multiple brains in one head.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And because you have multiple cores, multi-core processors can execute multiple instructions at the same time simultaneously.
Ah, so they can multitask properly.
Yes, each core can be working on a different part of a complex task or maybe running different programs altogether. This makes a huge difference when you're doing demanding stuff like playing games, editing video, or even just having loads of applications or browser tabs open at once.
Right, so a dual core processor has two of these processing units inside.
Exactly. And a quad-core has 4, an octa-core has 8, and so on.
And the effect of these cores really adds up with the clock speed, doesn't it? So if you have a quad-core CPU, 4 cores, running at a clock speed of, say, 3 gigahertz,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like having 4 processors, each capable of performing roughly 3 billion instructions per second.
That's the general idea, yes. So potentially, you're looking at a combined throughput of maybe 4 cores times 3 billion cycles per second, which is
Yeah.
potentially 12 billion instructions per second, although it's a bit more complex than simple multiplication in practice.
Wow, okay. That really puts it into perspective. So faster clock speed, bigger cache, and more cores all contribute to a faster, more powerful CPU.
Those are the big three for your GCSE understanding, definitely. Now, we've mentioned this fetch, decode, execute cycle a few times.
Yeah, you said we'd get to it.
Right. This is really the fundamental process that the CPU carries out nonstop to make your computer work. It's a key concept for computer science.
Right, so what exactly is this fetch, decode, execute cycle?
Well, at its absolute core, the main purpose of the CPU is simply to fetch instructions, decode them to understand what they mean, and then execute them, carry them out.
Fetch, decode, execute.
Exactly. This cycle repeats over and over again billions of times every second. It's the engine that drives all the processing your computer does. Think of it as the CPU constantly asking, what's the next instruction? Actually, what does that mean?
Yeah,
Then
right.
let's do it.
Okay, break it down for us step by step then. What happens in each of those stages? Fetch first.
Okay, the first stage is the fetch stage. During this stage, the next instruction that the CPU needs to carry out is retrieved or fetched from the computer's main memory, the RAM.
Right.
The CPU uses the address currently stored in the program counter, that bookmark register we talked about, to know where in RAM to find this next instruction. The instruction is then copied from RAM, travels along the bus, and is loaded into the CPU, often into the memory data register initially.
So it's like the CPU going to the right page number from the PC in the instruction manual RAM to get the next step.
Precisely. The second stage is the decode stage.
Decode, okay.
Here, the instruction that was just fetched is interpreted by the control unit, CU, inside the CPU. The CU figures out what that instruction actually means and what needs to be done.
Right.
It's like translating the instruction, which is represented as binary code, into a set of specific control signals that the CPU's other components, like the ALU or the registers, can understand and act upon.
So it's like the CU reads the instruction and says, okay, this means I need to tell the ALU to add these 2 numbers from these registers.
That's a very good way to think of it, yeah.
Yeah.
It works out the what and the how. And the final stage is the execute stage.
Execute. Makes sense.
This is where the CPU actually carries out the action required by the instruction. This could involve the ALU performing a calculation, like addition, or a logical operation, like comparison,
Mm-hmm.
or it might involve moving data between registers, or loading data from RAM into a register, or storing data from a register back out into RAM, or
Yeah.
maybe jumping to a different instruction address, whatever the decoded instruction specified.
So basically, it's fetch, go and get the instruction from RAM, decode, figure out what that instruction means via the CU, and execute, actually carry out that instruction using the ALU or other parts.
Exactly. And then, critically, once the instruction is executed, the program counter is updated to point to the next instruction, and the whole cycle starts all over again. Fetch,
Yeah.
decode, execute.
Ah.
Fetch, decode, execute.
Over and over.
Billions of times per second.
More.
That's how your computer manages to do everything you ask of it, from loading a web page to running a complex game for your homework, or, not homework.
Amazing. It's incredible to think of that happening constantly, just under the surface whenever you click a mouse button or open an app.
It really is. Now, just briefly, for your GCSE, you should also be aware of something called embedded systems.
Embedded systems. Okay.
Yeah. You might not realize it, but CPUs aren't just in your laptops, PCs, and phones.
Yeah.
Think about all the other smart devices around your house, maybe. Well, maybe a smart heating thermostat, a washing machine, a dishwasher, maybe your TV, a sat-nav system in a car, even some newer kettles or microwaves. These aren't full-fledged computers that can browse the web or write essays, but they all have tiny computer systems inside them, often with a CPU. These are called embedded systems.
Okay.
An embedded system is basically a computer system, often including a CPU, memory, and input-output that has a very specific dedicated function within a larger device or machine.
So they're like mini computers, but they're designed to do just one particular job within that device, like controlling the wash cycle.
Exactly. That's the key difference from general-purpose computers like your laptop, which can run lots of different software and do all sorts of things.
Right.
Embedded systems tend to be, well, optimized for their specific task. This often means they're smaller in size, use less electrical power, cost less to produce, and usually have lower processing power and less memory compared to general-purpose computers.
Makes sense, I suppose. A washing machine doesn't need the same grunt as a gaming PC.
Precisely. But the important thing to remember for your GCSE is that even these embedded systems rely on CPUs to carry out their specific functions. And those CPUs, however simple they might be, still generally operate using that same fundamental fetch-execute cycle we just discussed. Okay. Even if they're much less powerful than the CPU in your phone or games console, they're still fetching instructions, decoding them, and executing them to make the device work. So even your fancy smart fridge probably has a tiny brain going through those steps.
You'd be surprised what contains a little bit of processing power these days. Okay, so let's maybe wrap up our deep dive into the CPU for this episode of our GCSE Computer Science series.
Sounds good.
We've looked at the key components inside, the ALU that does the maths and logic,
The arithmetic logic unit.
the CU, the control unit, that's kind of the boss, decoding instructions and directing traffic.
Yep.
The coordinator, the clock that keeps everything marching in time.
The synchronizer.
These super fast registers, like the accumulator for results, the MAR for addresses, MDR for data, and the PC, the program counter, for tracking the next instruction.
Those vital little bits of internal memory.
And the bus that acts as the information highway connecting them all up.
Exactly. And we've also seen how the CPU's performance is affected by key things like its clock speed, how many cycles it can run per second,
Measured in gigahertz.
the size of its cache memory, that really fast temporary storage close to the CPU,
CPR is generally better.
and the number of processor cores it has, allowing it to do multiple things at once.
Like having multiple workers on the job.
And remember, the fundamental process that makes it all happen, the absolute core of processing, is that fetch-execute cycle.
Fetch the instruction from memory.
Decode it to figure out what it means.
And execute it to actually do the job, repeating billions of times a second.
That's the heart of it.
Absolutely. And it's worth you thinking, maybe next time you use your phone or your computer or even the microwave, about all the different devices you use every single day that contain these CPUs. These tiny but incredibly complex components are truly essential to modern life.
They really are mind-boggling when you stop to think about it. So considering how the CPU is constantly fetching instructions and data from memory, that fetch step, it makes you wonder, what might be a bottleneck, a limitation in how fast a computer can ultimately run, even with a super fast CPU?
Something to think about.
Definitely something for you to ponder as you continue your GCSE Computer Science studies.
Hmm.
Maybe think about the speed of that memory it's fetching from.